Under the pale shimmer of the full moon, a girl knelt at the edge of the forest, her trembling hands buried in the snow, her breath visible in the cold night air. She wasn't like the others. No wolf stirred within her. No animal spirit whispered in her mind. No power surged through her veins. In a pack where every heartbeat was tied to a wolf's soul, she was the only one who had none. They called her cursed. They mocked her for being wolfless. But tonight, something in the air felt different. The wind carried whispers she couldn't understand, and a pair of golden eyes were watching her from the darkness. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to Timeless Romance Tales, where every love story defies fate itself. Arya couldn't remember the last time someone had looked at her without disgust. Maybe when she was a child, before her wolf failed to appear on her 16th birthday. Before the whole pack decided she wasn't one of them. Every morning, she woke up to the same routine, whispers behind her back, laughter that followed her through the training grounds, and pitying looks from those who once called her sister. She had stopped trying to explain herself, stopped hoping for kindness. Instead, she learned to live quietly, on the farthest edge of the pack's territory, in a small cabin surrounded by wildflowers that bloomed only at dawn. Still, even without a wolf, Arya found purpose. She tended to the sick, cleaned the wounds of injured wolves who came back from patrols, and helped deliver pups when the healers were too tired. They didn't thank her, not really. They just left as quickly as they came, pretending they hadn't needed the wolfless girl's help. But Arya didn't do it for gratitude. She did it because kindness was the only power she had left. That night, the moon was full, silver and sharp in the sky. Arya walked down to the riverbank, her bare feet brushing against the frost-bitten grass. The pack was celebrating the lunar feast, the night every wolf renewed their bond with their spirit through the sacred howl. She wasn't invited. She never was. So she came here instead, to the quiet river where the moonlight spilled like melted glass. Her reflection looked fragile, almost ghostly. "Why wasn't I enough?" she whispered. The wind didn't answer. Only the rustle of trees replied, soft and distant. A tear slid down her cheek. "Moon goddess," she murmured, voice breaking. "If I was born broken, if I'm never meant to shift or belong, then at least let me stop feeling this pain. Please." Her words drifted into the night. But somewhere, deep beyond the mortal veil, destiny stirred. From the shadows of the woods, a tall figure stood cloaked in black fur, golden eyes gleaming like liquid fire. He watched the girl kneeling by the river, her fragile frame trembling beneath the cold light. He had come to the Crescent Moon pack a disguise, hiding his true identity. The Alpha King himself, Damien of the Blood Moon Kingdom. He was searching for something or perhaps someone. Every vision, every oracle, every whisper from the Moon Priestess led him here, to this land. And now he saw her. A wolfless girl, praying to the same goddess who had abandoned her. But when the wind brushed through her hair, Damien's wolf, a massive shadow buried deep within his soul, stirred violently. For the first time in years, the Alpha King's wolf growled in longing. "Mate," it whispered. Arya stood, unaware of the storm she had just awakened. She turned toward the forest, feeling that strange pull, like someone's gaze was on her. Her heart began to race. "Who's there?" she called softly. No reply, only silence. But she could feel it, the heaviness in the air, the energy that pressed against her skin. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to walk back home. She didn't know that with every step, the Alpha King's gaze followed her, his chest tightening with confusion and hunger. He couldn't believe it. How could the fates bind him to a Wolfless Omega, a girl with no power, no rank, no wolf? It made no sense. And yet, the bond pulsed stronger with every heartbeat. The next morning, Arya awoke to knocking on her door. She wiped her eyes, confused. No one ever came this far out. When she opened it, 2 guards from the main pack house stood before her. "Arya," one of them said stiffly, "you're summoned to the council hall." Immediately, her stomach dropped. Why? Because a visitor arrived last night, a royal one. And Alpha Riker wants every pack member present. A visitor? She frowned, clutching her shawl around her shoulders. She had heard rumors that the Alpha King was traveling across territories, but what would he want with her broken little pack? She didn't know this was the beginning of her destiny. The council hall buzzed with noise. Arya stood at the very back, head lowered as always. The pack's elites filled the room, their wolves proud and glowing with dominance. Then the doors opened. Every head bowed instantly. The scent of power filled the air, ancient, dark, intoxicating. Arya felt her knees weaken before she even saw him. And when she finally looked up, her heart stopped. The man who stepped through the doorway wasn't just powerful. He was breathtaking. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black with golden embroidery, his eyes glowed like twin suns. Her breath caught in her throat. Something inside her, something she didn't even know existed, stirred awake. And at that same moment, Damien's gaze found hers. It was supposed to be a simple inspection. But the second he saw her, his heart clenched in disbelief. The bond snapped open between them like lightning. He could hear her heartbeat, fast, frightened, beautiful. He could smell the purity of her scent. And his wolf howled inside him, desperate to claim her. Damien froze. He didn't even try to hide it. Riker, the pack's alpha, noticed the shift. "Your Majesty," he said quickly, "allow me to present our warriors. The best among them." But the king wasn't listening. He was still staring at Arya, the girl at the back of the hall, trembling under his gaze. "Who is she?" Damien's voice was deep, commanding. Riker hesitated, following his eyes. When he saw who the king meant, he stiffened. That's no one, Your Majesty. Just the wolfless girl. She doesn't even belong here." The entire hall went silent. Damien's jaw tightened. His golden eyes burned brighter. "No one," he repeated softly. His voice was calm, but the air grew colder. He took a step forward, the floor vibrating under his boots. "Then why does my wolf recognize her?" A murmur spread across the room. Arya's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't understand what was happening, why everyone was suddenly staring at her, why the king's eyes looked like they could pierce through her soul. Riker stuttered, "Your Majesty, she's wolfless." "That's impossible." But the king only smiled faintly, a dangerous, knowing smile. "Impossible," he said. "Then perhaps it's time we redefine what is possible." Arya felt faint. The weight of his gaze was too much, too intimate, too consuming. She wanted to look away, but couldn't. For the first time, someone wasn't mocking her. For the first time, someone was seeing her. And deep inside, a spark she thought long dead flickered to life.
The palace of the Blood Moon Kingdom stood like a crown of obsidian under the dawn. Its towers kissed the clouds, and banners of silver and black swayed in the cold wind. Inside those walls, every step was measured, every word weighed, especially when it came to the Alpha King. King Cale Damien Draven. Feared by many. Respected by all. But understood by none. While others saw strength in his stillness, the truth was quieter. He was a man at war with himself. The grand hall glimmered with golden chandeliers and polished marble floors. Nobles from every allied pack stood in attention, their daughters dressed in silks, their smiles dripping with ambition. Cale sat on his throne, his expression unreadable as his mother, the Dowager Queen, spoke in her graceful yet commanding tone. "The moon-choosing ceremony is in 3 nights," she said. "You must select a Luna. The kingdom cannot wait any longer." Cale's jaw tightened. "I told you before, mother," he said evenly, "I will not choose a Luna because of tradition." The room fell silent. A few nobles exchanged anxious glances. The queen's eyes softened, but there was a sharpness beneath her calm. "It is not merely tradition, my son. It is duty. The moon goddess blesses our line through unity. A king without a queen is a kingdom without direction." Cale rose from his throne. "And yet, how can I unite with someone my soul does not recognize? Should I let politics dictate what destiny has not confirmed?" The court murmured, the sound spreading like a wave. The queen sighed, stepping closer. Kale, every alpha king before you. Was not me, he interrupted quietly. His golden eyes flickered, colder than the winter light streaming through the hall. I will not stand beside a woman chosen by the council when my heart remains untouched. I refuse to lie to the moon goddess. The queen's lips parted, as though to argue, but Kale had already turned and walked away, the long black cape flowing behind him. As he passed the pillars, his beta, Lucian, followed quickly. Your Majesty, you cannot just dismiss the council like that, Lucian said under his breath. They're growing restless. Some say the goddess has turned from you. Kale stopped. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. If the goddess has turned from me, then perhaps she never favored me to begin with. Lucian hesitated. And the dreams, Your Majesty? They've returned, haven't they? Kale looked away. The nightmares, no visions, had plagued him for weeks now. Every night, he saw the same scene. A girl kneeling beneath the moon, her voice breaking as she whispered a prayer. He never saw her face. Only heard the sorrow in her voice, a pain so raw, it haunted his waking hours. Yes, Kale said quietly. She calls to the moon, but I can never reach her. That night, when the palace finally slept, Kale stood by his balcony, staring out at the forest stretching endlessly beyond the castle walls. The moonlight painted his skin in silver. His wolf stirred restlessly inside him, whispering a single word. Go. Kale closed his eyes. He knew what it meant. He had ignored the pull long enough. If fate would not come to him, he would go to fate. He left before dawn. Wearing a simple cloak, with no crown, no guards, just the air of a traveler. Lucian caught him at the gate, worry written across his face. You're really doing this, the beta said. Leaving your throne to chase a dream? Kale's lips curved slightly. I'm not chasing a dream. I'm answering one. Lucian sighed. And if the council discovers your absence? Kale's gaze hardened. Then let them wonder what kind of king walks the land he rules. With that, he turned away and disappeared into the misty forest, guided only by instinct, and the faint, unshakable sound of her voice echoing in his mind. Days passed. The forest grew thicker, darker. Kale's disguise fooled the wandering traders and travelers he met along the way, though his commanding aura made many keep their distance. The moon grew fuller with each night, and so did the tug in his chest. Somewhere, he knew, the girl existed. The one whose soul called to his. He didn't understand why he felt it so deeply, but the moon goddess's mark burned faintly on his wrist each time he dreamed of her. By the fifth night, exhaustion and hunger began to settle in. His cloak was torn, his boots covered in mud. He had fought off rogues twice already. Still, he pressed on. The rain began suddenly, a violent, merciless downpour that soaked through his clothes and blurred his vision. Lightning ripped across the sky. The forest floor turned to slick mud. Kale struggled to move forward, shielding his face. His wolf growled inside him, urging him to shift, but the moment he tried, a wave of pain shot through his chest. Something was wrong. The energy in the forest was unnatural. He stumbled against a fallen tree, breathing hard. Damn it, he muttered, trying to steady himself. Then he heard it, faintly through the storm, a cry. It wasn't a wolf's howl. It was human. His instincts flared. Without thinking, he ran toward the sound. Through the curtain of rain, he saw them, two rogue wolves circling a young boy, no older than 14, who clutched a basket and screamed for help. Kale didn't hesitate. Even in his weakened state, the alpha inside him roared to life. With a growl that shook the trees, he lunged forward. His claws slashed through the first rogue before it could react. The second one bit into his arm, tearing through flesh. Kale roared, grabbed the wolf by the throat, and snapped its neck in one swift motion. The boy stared, wide-eyed and trembling. Go, Kale ordered through gritted teeth. Run home. The boy didn't need to be told twice. He vanished into the trees, leaving Kale standing in the rain, blood mixing with water as his strength began to fade. The wound on his arm burned fiercely, more than it should have. Something was wrong with the rogues. Their scent carried poison, dark magic. He tried to move, but his vision blurred. The world tilted sideways. And then everything went black. When Arya opened her door that night, the storm nearly ripped it off its hinges. She gasped. There, lying unconscious at her doorstep, was a man. Tall, broad, soaked in rain and blood. "Moon goddess," she whispered, rushing forward. "Sir? Can you hear me?" He didn't move. She dragged him inside with all her strength, grunting as she pulled him to the small bed by the fireplace. Her fingers trembled as she lit the lantern. The sight of the wound on his arm made her heart race, deep claw marks, still bleeding. She grabbed her healing herbs, water, and bandages, working as fast as she could. He groaned faintly as she cleaned the cut, his breath shallow but steady. "Hold on," she whispered. "Please, hold on." For hours, she tended to him, changing the cloths, feeding the fire, watching his chest rise and fall. There was something strange about him. Even half-conscious, his presence filled the small room, powerful, commanding, almost otherworldly. And beneath it all, that faint, intoxicating scent of forest smoke and moonlight. Arya couldn't explain why her pulse quickened every time she looked at him. When she brushed a strand of wet hair from his forehead, she noticed the faint shimmer of a mark on his wrist, a crescent moon. Her breath caught. That symbol was sacred, the mark of the Alpha King's lineage. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "That's impossible." His eyes opened, glowing golden even in the dim light. For a moment, neither of them moved. Only the sound of the fire crackling between them. Then his voice, deep and hoarse, broke the silence. "Where am I?" Arya swallowed hard, her heart hammering in her chest. "You're safe," she managed to say softly. "You were hurt in the storm. I found you outside." He blinked slowly, trying to focus on her face. When their eyes met, everything else vanished. The bond flared. The same invisible thread that had sparked in the council hall now burned with recognition. Kale's pulse roared in his ears. Her scent, soft, pure, familiar. The girl from his dreams. He stared at her in disbelief. It couldn't be. It was. "You," he breathed, voice rough with awe. "You're the one." Arya frowned. "What?" But he didn't answer. His body went limp again, consciousness slipping away. She sat there frozen, her wrist still tingling where he had touched her. Outside, the storm began to fade, and for the first time in years, the moonlight shone through the clouds, casting its glow on the two souls fate had finally brought together. The storm had died hours ago, but its echo still lingered in the night, soft rain dripping from the roof, the whisper of wind against the windowpane. Arya sat beside the unconscious stranger, watching his chest rise and fall beneath the tattered fabric of his shirt. The faint glow from the fire cast amber shadows across his face, strong jawline, high cheekbones, lips slightly parted as he breathed. He looked nothing like the rogues or travelers who sometimes wandered near her home. There was an air of quiet authority about him, even in his stillness, as if he carried the weight of 100 secrets on his shoulders. She brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead again. "Who are you, really?" she whispered. But the man didn't stir. By morning, the forest was calm again, sunlight streaming through the trees, birds calling softly beyond the window. Arya had barely slept. She'd changed his bandages twice, making sure the fever didn't worsen. Now, as she poured warm broth into a small wooden bowl, she heard a faint rustle from behind her. When she turned, she found him sitting up on the bed, one hand pressed against his side. His eyes met hers, sharp, golden, alert. "Easy," she said quickly, setting down the bowl. "You're safe. But you lost a lot of blood." He blinked, disoriented. "Where am I?" My home, she replied gently. I found you at my doorstep last night, half dead from the storm. You were attacked. His gaze softened. You helped me. It's what I do, she said with a small shrug. I'm a healer. People usually come here when they need help, though not many do anymore. He tilted his head slightly, studying her. There was a quiet sadness in her tone she tried to hide. I'm Kale, he said after a pause, his voice low but steady. A traveler. Arya gave a faint smile. A traveler? With wounds like that? Let's just say the forest wasn't kind, he murmured, glancing down at his arm. She noticed how his hand subtly moved to cover the faint mark on his wrist, that strange symbol she'd seen glowing the night before. But she said nothing. Not yet. Over the next few days, Kale remained in her cottage, regaining his strength. Arya tended to his wounds every morning, grinding herbs and mixing salves while humming softly to herself. Her hands were gentle but sure, the kind of touch that spoke of patience and quiet care. Sometimes they talked, though never deeply. He told her he came from a far-off pack to the east, where trade routes had dried up and rogues made travel dangerous. She didn't question it, though part of her knew he wasn't telling her everything. Still, there was something about him that felt safe. At night, when the forest outside fell silent, they sat by the fireplace, two strangers bound by circumstance, yet somehow connected in ways neither could explain. He would listen to her talk about her garden, her herbs, the stars, and in return, he'd tell her stories from places she'd never seen. But sometimes, when she laughed, he'd fall quiet. Watching her. As if trying to memorize the sound. One night, as the flames danced low and the shadows deepened, Kale finally spoke what had been lingering on his tongue for days. Why do you live here alone? Arya's smile faded. She looked into the fire. Because the world decided I didn't belong in it. He frowned slightly. What do you mean? She hesitated, then sighed. I was born wolfless. No shift. No strength. To my pack, that made me useless. A disgrace to the moon goddess. So they banished me when I was 15. Kale's expression darkened. Banished? She nodded. They said I brought shame to the Blood Moon pack. But I didn't care about power or titles. I just wanted to heal people. My mother taught me the old ways before she died, how herbs can do what even wolves sometimes can't. Her voice trembled slightly. So I stayed here, and I help anyone who comes to my door. Even those who once called me cursed. Kale stared at her in silence. In that moment, something inside him cracked, the walls he'd built around his heart for years. He'd seen cruelty in many forms, but hearing her speak with such grace despite the pain, it stirred something fierce and protective in him. You're not cursed, he said softly. You're stronger than all of them. Arya looked at him, surprised. No one had ever said that to her before. A faint smile touched her lips. You don't even know me. Kale's gaze lingered on her face, the curve of her cheek, the firelight in her eyes. Maybe not, he murmured. But I'd like to. Her heartbeat stumbled. She turned away quickly, pretending to poke the fire. You should rest, traveler. He smiled faintly. Yes, healer. Days blurred into nights. The forest changed with the rhythm of their growing closeness. He began helping her with chores, fetching water, chopping firewood, fixing the roof. Sometimes she caught him watching her with that unreadable expression again, like he was searching for something familiar. And she, against her better judgment, found herself waiting for his voice, his presence. Every glance, every quiet exchange, became heavier with unspoken words. There were moments their hands brushed by accident, a spark passing between them that neither dared to name. One evening, she tripped over a loose floorboard, and he caught her before she fell. His arms wrapped around her waist, steady and warm. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, the world went still. She could feel his breath against her skin, steady but deep. And though he pulled away first, she could tell it wasn't out of disinterest, it was restraint. Kale turned from her, pretending to adjust the lamp. You should be careful. Her lips curved faintly. Maybe I wanted to see if you'd catch me. He froze, caught off guard by her teasing tone. When he turned, she was already hiding her smile behind a mug of tea. For the first time in years, he laughed. A low, rich sound that warmed the room more than the fire ever could. The secret he can't tell. Late that night, when Arya had gone to her room, Kale sat alone by the fire. His wrist throbbed, faint light pulsing beneath the bandage. The royal crest burned softly, as if reminding him of what he was running from. He pulled up his sleeve and stared at it. The mark of the Alpha King. The symbol that could ruin everything. If she ever saw it, if she ever knew. He clenched his fist, jaw tightening. He'd lied to her. Every word of his story had been half-truth. He wasn't some wandering traveler. He was the ruler of the very pack that had cast her out. And she, the girl who had every reason to hate him, was the one nursing him back to life. That night, he couldn't sleep. He walked quietly to her door and paused, listening. Her soft breathing reached him through the wood, steady, peaceful. Something inside him ached. He'd fought wars, conquered enemies, faced death without fear. But the thought of losing this fragile peace terrified him. Forgive me, he whispered to the darkness. For not being the man you think I am. Morning came with sunlight filtering through the window. Arya was in the garden, gathering herbs, while Kale cleaned the small table near the fireplace. As he wiped the surface, his sleeve rolled back slightly, revealing the edge of the glowing royal crest. At that moment, Arya stepped inside. Kale, do you know where? Her words stopped midair. Her gaze fell to his wrist. He froze. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then, quickly, Kale turned, pulling his sleeve down. Just an old burn, he said, forcing a faint smile. Nothing important. Arya frowned, eyes narrowing slightly. I've seen a lot of wounds. That didn't look like one. He met her gaze, his heart pounding. It's nothing, he said again, voice lower this time, but not unkind. Something in his tone stopped her from pushing further. She nodded slowly, though the question still lingered in her eyes. He exhaled quietly, relief washing over him. She hadn't seen the full mark. Not yet. That night, as the moon rose high above the forest, Kale lay awake, watching its silver light spill through the window. And in the next room, Arya lay staring at the ceiling, trying to ignore the strange pull she felt toward the man sleeping under her roof. Two hearts. One secret. A destiny quietly weaving its thread between them. And neither of them knew that fate had only just begun. The next morning arrived wrapped in soft mist. Dew clung to the grass like crystals, and smoke drifted lazily from Arya's cottage chimney. Kale awoke to the smell of something sweet, wild honey and herbs simmering in a wooden bowl near the fire. His arm, once bruised and torn, was now carefully wrapped with fresh linen. Every fold smelled faintly of lavender. He blinked, dazed by the quiet. For once, no guards, no royal messengers, no courtiers whispering his name. Only the gentle crackle of the fire and the soft hum of the girl who had saved him. Arya stood by the hearth, her hair tied loosely, her hands moving with practiced care as she stirred the mixture. The early sun slipped through the window, laying a golden crown upon her head, and for a moment, Kale wondered if the goddess herself had sent him here. You're awake, she said softly, turning to him. How do you feel? Better, he admitted. Stronger, maybe because you're a far better healer than any I've met. A faint blush colored her cheeks. That's only because I don't charge the moon for every herb I use. Kale laughed. The sound startled them both, it had been so long since laughter felt real to him. He sat up carefully, feeling the pull of his bandaged arm. You shouldn't be alone out here, he said, scanning the small cottage, shelves of dried herbs, jars filled with glowing liquids, a single bed neatly arranged. Don't you ever get scared? I used to, Arya said quietly, turning her gaze toward the window. But fear fades when you have nothing left to lose. The words struck something deep inside him. He wanted to ask what she meant, what pain hid behind her calm eyes, but she turned away before he could. Days passed. Kale didn't leave. He told himself he needed time to heal, but the truth was simpler, he couldn't. He helped her gather herbs by the river, his royal hands clumsy with baskets and roots. She laughed at his confusion, teaching him which plants healed fever and which ones soothed pain. The air between them softened, filled with quiet jokes and stolen glances. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire. She would hum songs from her childhood, and he would listen as if each note carried a secret spell meant only for him. Once, when she caught him watching her too long, she teased, "You look at me as though I'm made of moonlight." "Maybe you are," he replied without thinking. Her laughter melted into silence, the kind that said more than words could. One afternoon, a storm gathered unexpectedly. Thunder rolled across the forest like the growl of an angry god. Rain poured, drumming against the roof. The fire dimmed to a low glow as the room darkened. Kale moved to help her close the shutters. Their hands brushed, once, twice, then lingered. The air felt charged, the same way the sky felt before lightning struck. "You should sit," she murmured, her voice trembling. "You're still recovering." "So are you," he said, stepping closer. "From the world that never saw your worth." She looked up, startled. His eyes, that impossible blue that seemed to see through her, burned with something dangerous and tender all at once. "Why do you say things like that?" she whispered. "Because they're true," Kale said simply. Silence filled the small room. Outside, the rain hammered harder, drowning the world. Inside, only their breaths moved. When lightning flashed through the window, it lit their faces in silver, two souls trapped in a moment neither of them wanted to end. Kale reached up, fingers brushing her cheek, tracing the faint scar that ran near her temple, a mark she'd always tried to hide. "I used to think scars made people weak," he said. "Now I see they make them real." Her heart stumbled in her chest. She wanted to pull away, but something rooted her to the spot. His touch was gentle, reverent, as though he feared she might vanish. "Kale," she breathed, "don't." But she didn't finish. He didn't kiss her, not yet. Instead, he let his hand fall, his eyes filled with the weight of all the things he couldn't say. That night, as the storm raged, Kale couldn't sleep. He stood by the window, watching rain blur the world into shadows. Every flash of lightning revealed Arya sleeping peacefully by the fire, wrapped in a worn blanket. Her face, in that fleeting light, looked fragile yet fierce, like someone who had survived every cruelty fate could give. He thought of his mother's voice, of the nobles' endless demands. "You must choose a Luna," they'd said. "The kingdom needs heirs. The moon choosing is law. Law. Tradition. Duty." Words that had ruled his life but never filled his heart. He had come here searching for something he couldn't name, and now that he'd found it, he was terrified of what it meant. By dawn, the rain had stopped. Mist hung over the forest again, heavy and quiet. Kale stepped outside to fetch water, his cloak damp from the night air. As he bent to fill the pail from the stream, a faint rustle in the trees caught his attention. He froze. Voices. Faint but distinct. Men, his men. He ducked behind a tree, pulse racing. Through the fog, he saw two royal guards on horseback, scanning the ground. "His Majesty was last seen near this part of the forest," one said. "Keep searching. The Queen Mother grows restless." Kale's breath hitched. They were too close. He waited until they passed, then hurried back to the cottage, water forgotten. Arya was awake, feeding the fire, unaware of what was outside. "Is something wrong?" she asked, noticing the tension in his shoulders. "Nothing," he lied. Just thought I heard a fox. She tilted her head, unconvinced but said nothing. He turned away, gripping the edge of the table to steady himself. For the first time since arriving, he felt the walls closing in. He couldn't hide forever. The kingdom would come for him, and when it did, it would drag her world into his. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, they shared dinner in near silence. Arya could sense something shifting in him, a distance creeping where warmth once lived. "Kale," she said softly, "if you need to leave, you should. I'll be fine." He looked at her sharply. "Why would you say that?" "Because, you've been watching the trees all day. Like you're waiting for someone." He swallowed hard. "Maybe I'm just afraid to lose what I've found." She met his gaze, steady, brave. "And what have you found?" Kale opened his mouth to answer, but the words died. What could he say? "You. I found you. The girl who makes me forget I'm a king." Instead, he reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Then, a sudden thud, a bird striking the window, shattered the moment. Arya jumped. Kale cursed under his breath and stood, moving to check outside. The night had deepened, shadows long and heavy. He didn't see the small scroll tied to the bird's leg until he opened the window. His heart dropped. He untied it quickly and unfolded the paper. The wax seal, crimson and marked with the royal crest, gleamed faintly under the firelight. "Your disappearance has caused unrest. Return at once before the council acts. The kingdom cannot wait." The handwriting was unmistakable, the Queen Mother's. Arya noticed his sudden stillness. "What is it?" she asked, rising slowly. He crumpled the paper before she could see it. "Nothing important." But his voice betrayed him. She frowned, stepping closer. "You're lying." Arya, his throat tightened. He couldn't do this. Not tonight. So he turned away, staring into the fire, letting the flames hide the storm in his eyes. "Then tell me," she whispered, "who are you really?" He faced her, and for a second, she saw it, the authority in his posture, the nobility in his gaze, the unspoken power that no traveler could ever carry. But before she could speak again, he reached for her hand and pressed it gently to his chest. "Please," he said. "Just trust me a little longer." Her heart warred with her mind, but the warmth of his touch silenced every doubt. She nodded, once, slowly. "All right. But don't disappear on me." He smiled sadly. "I'll try." That night, neither of them slept much. Kale sat awake until dawn, watching the pale light creep through the window, knowing that soon, too soon, the world he'd left behind would come crashing into the only peace he'd ever known. And when it did, he feared he would lose not just his crown, but her. Kale receives a secret message from the palace. The nobles are searching for him. The morning Kale left, the forest felt colder than usual. Mist hung low, swallowing the path that led beyond Arya's cottage. The fire had gone out hours ago, and the silence between them was heavier than the rain-soaked air. He stood at her door, cloak fastened, eyes shadowed by guilt he could no longer hide. "You're leaving," Arya said quietly, though she had known it since dawn. His restlessness had spoken louder than words. Kale hesitated. "Only for a short while. There are things I must handle." "Things," she repeated, the word trembling on her lips. "What kind of things, Kale?" "You've been hiding something from me since the night you read that letter." He looked away. "It's complicated." Her laugh was soft and bitter. "Everything about you is complicated." He stepped closer, his voice low, urgent. "I promise you, Arya, I will come back." She wanted to believe him. Goddesses, she wanted to. But promises had always been fragile things in her world, spoken easily, broken even easier. "Then go," she whispered, turning from him. "Before I ask you to stay." He lingered in the doorway, the urge to tell her everything clawing at his throat. But the sound of distant howls, the palace guards, perhaps already searching, cut through the forest, pulling him back to reality. "Forgive me," he murmured, more to the wind than to her. And then he was gone. Days turned into nights. Nights into aching silence. Arya tried to fill the void he left behind. She gathered herbs, tended to the wounded wolves who came to her quietly in the dark. But nothing healed the emptiness in her chest. Every time the door creaked in the wind, she thought it was him. Every shadow outside the window made her heart leap, only to break again. She told herself it was foolish to miss someone she barely knew. But love didn't care for logic. It had already made a home in her heart, stubborn and wild. Sometimes she would sit by the fire, tracing the rim of his forgotten cup. The memory of his laughter, his steady gaze, the way he said her name like it was sacred, all of it haunted her. "Why does it hurt like this?" she whispered into the quiet. "You promised to return." It was a week later when the forest finally answered her. The door creaked open one evening, and there he was, the Kale, rain dripping from his hair, cloak torn, eyes dark with exhaustion. "Kale," she gasped, rising from her stool. You're back." He looked at her as if he hadn't breathed in days. "I told you I would return." For a long moment, they just stood there, two souls caught between anger and relief, silence and longing. Then she stepped forward and struck his chest lightly with her fist. "You could have sent a message," she said, her voice trembling. "You vanished." "I thought." "I know," he interrupted, catching her wrist gently. "And I'm sorry. I had to leave before they." "They," she echoed. "Who are you running from, Kale?" He froze. Her gaze was sharp now, demanding truth. "Tell me," she said. "You owe me that much." He released her hand slowly, his breath uneven. "I can't tell you everything, not yet. But you deserve to know something." Her heart thudded. "Then say it." He swallowed hard, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm not who you think I am, Arya. I came here, not by accident." Her brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" He took a step closer, eyes glinting with regret. "I came from far away, from a place where people wear crowns instead of hearts. I left to escape it. To find something real. To find someone real." Her throat tightened. "And you found me?" "Yes," he breathed. "You." The confession left her breathless. For a heartbeat, the world was still. Then she shook her head, stepping back. "That's not an answer." "Who are you really?" Before he could reply, a sharp sound pierced the moment, a horn in the distance. The echo bounced through the forest, deep and commanding. Kale's blood ran cold. He knew that call. Only one place used it. The palace. Arya frowned. What was that? Before he could speak, the door burst open. 5 armored guards stormed into the cottage, their cloaks dripping with rain, blades drawn. The air filled with the metallic scent of steel and authority. Arya gasped, stumbling back. "Who are?" "Your Majesty," one of them shouted, kneeling immediately. "We've finally found you." The words froze her blood. She turned to Kale, disbelief spreading across her face. "Your Majesty?" Kale's jaw clenched. He raised a hand, signaling his men to lower their weapons. "Enough," he said sharply. "You shouldn't have come here." "But, sire," one of them protested, "the Queen Mother ordered us to." "I said enough." His voice boomed through the small cottage, echoing with a force Arya had never heard before. It wasn't the voice of the man who had laughed beside her fire. It was something older, deeper, born of command. The guards fell silent, lowering their heads. Arya's heart pounded wildly. Her hands trembled as she stared at him. "They called you Your Majesty." Kale turned to her slowly. Rain dripped from his cloak, pooling on the wooden floor. It's true, he said quietly. I'm the Alpha King. For a moment, the world tilted. Her knees weakened. The air vanished from her lungs. You lied to me? The words barely left her throat. Arya, please? No. Her voice broke. You told me you were a traveler. You said you wanted peace, that you were nobody. I didn't lie about that, he said, stepping toward her. I am a man who wanted peace. A man who was tired of the crown. But you hid who you were, she shouted, tears brimming. You let me care for you, feed you, trust you, all while you wore a crown behind my back. He flinched as though struck. I wanted to tell you, he said desperately. Every night I stayed, I wanted to. But if you knew the truth, you would have treated me like everyone else. And I couldn't bear that. Her tears spilled freely now, streaking down her cheeks. You think that makes it right? No, he whispered. It makes me human. She turned away, hands shaking. Get out. He froze. Arya. Get out, she cried, her voice breaking completely. Take your guards, take your lies, take your crown, but leave my heart out of it. He took a step forward, reaching for her, but she stepped back like his touch would burn. The guards stood awkwardly, eyes downcast, sensing the gravity of what they had interrupted. One of them cleared his throat. Sire, we must return. The council. Wait outside, Kale said sharply, his voice cracking under the weight of pain. The guards obeyed, stepping out into the rain. When they were gone, he turned back to her. She was still facing away, staring at the dying fire. I never meant to hurt you, he said quietly. You were the only person who saw me, not as a king, not as a name. Just as a man. She laughed bitterly. And what am I supposed to do with that? Be grateful? He closed his eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to believe one thing, every word I said to you, every look, every moment, it was real. Her shoulders trembled. If it was real, you wouldn't have lied. He didn't have an answer for that. Outside, thunder rolled again, echoing the storm in their hearts. He watched her one last time, the girl who had healed his wounds and broken his walls, and realized the hardest battle of his life wasn't on any throne. It was right here, in this tiny cottage, with the woman who no longer believed him. I'll fix this, he said finally. Even if it takes my crown. Don't bother, she whispered. I never wanted your crown. I just wanted you. The words hit him like a blade. He opened his mouth, but no words came. And then, for the first time since he became king, Kale obeyed a command that wasn't his own. He turned and walked away. Outside, rain poured harder, washing away his footsteps. Inside, Arya sank to her knees by the fire, trembling, her tears falling into the ashes that still smelled faintly of him. You lied to me, she whispered to the empty room, her voice breaking in half. Arya falls to her knees, trembling, you lied to me? Rain fell for 3 days after Kale left the healer's cottage. It was as if the skies themselves wept for the broken bond between them, for the love that had bloomed in secret and been shattered in truth. Arya didn't leave her bed for 2 nights. The cottage that once glowed with warmth now felt hollow. His cup still sat by the fire, untouched. The scent of his cloak still lingered faintly in the air, pine, smoke, and something royal she now despised. Every knock of the wind on the wooden door made her flinch, thinking maybe, just maybe, he had come back. But it was never him. It was strange how love could make a home feel smaller. How a heart could ache for someone it no longer trusted. By the 4th morning, she forced herself up. She couldn't stay broken forever. Not for a king. Not for a man who had lied to her. She opened her window, letting the sharp scent of dew and forest fill her lungs. The world was still turning, even if hers had stopped. When Arya stepped into the pack grounds again, she noticed the difference instantly. Where there had once been mocking whispers, now there was silence and cautious stares. The wolves who once called her cursed now moved aside as she walked. The same warriors who had laughed at her now bowed their heads slightly, pretending not to notice her. She didn't understand it at first. Until she overheard them talking. They say the Alpha King stayed in her cottage for days. Imagine, the wolfless girl catching a king's eye. She must have used magic. There's no other way. Arya stopped walking, her heart twisting painfully. They didn't respect her. They envied her. They feared her. And that was worse. She wanted none of it, not their pity, not their hollow admiration. When one of the healers tried to hand her a new robe as a token of honor, Arya's voice broke sharp. "I don't want your gifts," she said coldly. "Nothing has changed. I'm still the same wolfless girl you cast out." Then she walked away, her chin high, even though her heart trembled inside her chest. In the grand halls of the Blood Moon Palace, Chaol stood before the council of nobles. His cloak was soaked from travel, his eyes sleepless, but his resolve burned brighter than the torches lining the throne room. "My decision is final," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I will choose no Luna at the moon-choosing ceremony." The nobles exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, Lord Garin, a broad-shouldered wolf with silver hair, stepped forward. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "the ceremony is not merely tradition. It is law. A king must bond publicly, to secure the blessing of the moon goddess." Chaol's golden eyes hardened. "Then the law will bend." Gasps rippled through the room. From the golden dais, the Queen Mother rose slowly, her expression calm but her tone sharp as a blade. "Bend the law," she said softly. "You speak like a boy, not a king." Chaol turned to her, his jaw tightening. "Mother." "Don't mother me," she snapped. "Do you know what your refusal means? Chaos among the packs. Division in the court. The people will see you as unstable, ruled by emotion." "I'm ruled by choice," he replied. "And I have made mine." Her eyes narrowed. "And what is your choice?" Chaol took a deep breath. "Arya." The hall fell into stunned silence. Lord Garin stepped back, aghast. "The wolfless girl? You would shame the crown for a commoner?" Chaol's voice was steady. "She's not common. She's the purest heart I've ever known. While you sit here plotting alliances and trading daughters for power, she's out there healing your wounded soldiers without asking for a single coin." The Queen Mother's fingers curled around her staff. "A wolfless healer, Chaol. You would crown a girl who cannot even shift as your queen? What will the other packs say? The Alpha King, bound to a broken mate?" Chaol's lips parted, his tone dangerously low. "Then let them laugh. Their laughter doesn't rule me." "You are a king," she shouted, voice echoing off the marble walls. "You belong to the crown, not your heart." He met her gaze unflinchingly. "Maybe that's what's wrong with this kingdom. Everyone bows to the crown, no one listens to their heart." The Queen Mother's eyes gleamed with fury, but she composed herself, her voice turning cold and measured. "If you continue down this path," she said, "you will lose the council's trust. The ceremony will go on, with or without your blessing." Chaol's expression hardened. "Do what you must. But know this, I will marry no one but her." And with that, he turned and walked away from the throne, leaving a room full of wolves too stunned to speak. Far from the palace, Arya sat by the river where everything had started, the same place she had once prayed to the moon goddess for peace. Peace felt like a cruel joke now. She stared at her reflection, her face pale under the moonlight. "You're a fool," she whispered to herself. Falling for a king. Believing his words. But deep down, she knew it wasn't all lies. She had seen something real in his eyes. The way he looked at her, not as a healer, not as a wolfless girl, but as if she were his entire world. And yet, love didn't erase betrayal. When she closed her eyes, she could still hear his voice, "I never meant to hurt you." "Then why did you?" She thought bitterly. Back in the palace, the Queen Mother sat with Lord Garin and the other nobles, her eyes sharp and calculating. If the king will not follow the law, she said slowly, then we will use the law against him. Lord Garin frowned. Your Majesty? The moon-choosing ceremony will go on, she continued. But we will make sure the entire kingdom sees how foolish his infatuation is. Invite the girl. There was a pause of disbelief. Invite her? The wolfless one? Yes, the Queen Mother said, a cold smile forming. Let her walk into our world. Let her feel what it's like to be mocked, to be measured, to realize she will never belong. The nobles exchanged wicked smiles. And when the ceremony ends, the Queen Mother finished, my son will see her for what she truly is, a mistake. 2 days later, Arya was preparing herbs when a carriage rolled up the dirt path to her cottage. The horses were black as night, their harnesses made of silver. A messenger in fine velvet stepped out, holding a scroll sealed with gold wax. Arya of the Crescent Moon Pack, he asked. She nodded warily. Yes. He handed her the scroll. By decree of the royal court, you are invited to attend the moon-choosing ceremony as an honored guest. Arya blinked. The what? The ceremony, he repeated, smiling too politely. Where His Majesty, the Alpha King, will select his Luna before the entire kingdom. Her stomach twisted. I don't understand. It is a great honor, he said with a slight bow. The Queen Mother herself requested your presence. Arya's heart sank. It wasn't an invitation. It was a message, a cruel, gilded reminder of her place. Before she could speak, the messenger was already climbing back into the carriage. The palace expects your attendance at moonrise. Don't be late. As the carriage disappeared down the path, Arya stared at the scroll in her hands. The gold seal shimmered faintly in the fading light. Her fingers trembled. She didn't need to open it to know what it said. It was mockery wrapped in ceremony, a stage built for humiliation. The wolves who once mocked her would laugh again. The nobles would sneer. And Kale, she didn't even know what she'd see in his eyes anymore. Her voice cracked as she whispered to herself, why can't they just let me live in peace? She looked up at the moon, tears blurring her vision. Why must love always come with pain? The night answered her with silence. That evening, Arya sat before her fire, the golden scroll still unopened beside her. Outside, the forest howled with the rising wind, a sound that carried both warning and destiny. She didn't know what awaited her at the palace. Only that she couldn't run forever. When she finally broke the seal and read the elegant, venom-laced words, her heart hardened. You are cordially invited to witness the sacred moon-choosing ceremony, by the order of the Queen Mother of the Blood Moon Kingdom. And below, written in silver ink. Come and see what a wolfless heart can never claim. Arya's hands trembled. Her jaw tightened. And for the first time in her life, the wolfless girl didn't feel weak. She felt angry. If they wanted her to come as a joke, then she would come. But she would not bow. She would not cry. She would make them remember her name. Arya receives the golden invitation to the moon-choosing ceremony, a cruel mockery from the Queen Mother herself. The moon-choosing ceremony was unlike anything Arya had ever seen. The palace gleamed like a temple of silver fire. Every spire shimmered beneath the full moon, banners fluttered in the night wind, and the courtyard overflowed with nobles dressed in gold, sapphire, and silk. From afar, it looked like a festival of beauty. But up close, it smelled of arrogance. The air was thick with perfume and pride. Every step Arya took echoed like thunder in her own chest. Her dress, the only one she owned, was plain white linen, clean but humble. She had refused the gown sent by the palace. It felt wrong to wear their mockery. As she walked past the marble gates, the guards sneered. One whispered to another, that's her. The wolfless one. Arya heard them, but she didn't flinch. Let them whisper, she thought. I didn't come to beg. Inside, the grand hall shone brighter than daylight. Silver torches lined the walls, and a great glass ceiling revealed the full moon above, round and radiant, like a watching goddess. At the far end of the hall sat the throne of the Alpha King. Kale sat upon it, dressed in deep midnight blue, his crown glinting faintly in the moonlight. His posture was regal, but his eyes, they searched the crowd like a man drowning in silence. And then he saw her. Arya. The moment their gazes met, something in his chest cracked open. He hadn't seen her in weeks, and yet she looked exactly as she had the day he left, strong, scarred, beautiful in her quiet defiance. But there was something else in her eyes now, distance. Pain. Betrayal that hadn't yet healed. Kale's hand tightened around the arm of his throne. Around him, noble daughters stood in shimmering gowns, each more extravagant than the last. They smiled coyly, whispered behind jeweled fans, each hoping to be chosen. But Kale's eyes never left Arya. At the Queen Mother's signal, a golden gong echoed through the hall. "Let the sacred ceremony begin," she announced, her voice rich with pride. Every noble bowed. Every wolf lowered their head. Except Arya. She stood still, her chin high, her heart pounding like a drum. The Queen Mother's gaze swept over the crowd and landed on her. "Ah," she said smoothly, feigning surprise. "The healer of Crescent Moon Pack. How lovely of you to attend." Murmurs rippled across the hall. A few nobles chuckled under their breath. "Such bravery," one woman whispered mockingly. "To show her face after everything," said another. Arya's fists clenched at her sides. Her pulse burned in her ears. The Queen Mother smiled, a serpent's smile. "Do step forward, my dear. We wouldn't want the moon to miss her favorite." Laughter echoed softly, cruel and sharp. Arya hesitated. Then she took a step forward. Then another. Not because she was brave, but because she refused to let them see her break. The royal priest lifted a silver chalice high into the air. "The moon blesses her chosen pair," he declared, "and through her light, the bond of fated souls shall be revealed." The noble daughters lined up before the throne, bowing one by one. Each hoped that the glow of the moon, channeled through the chalice, would fall upon her, signifying divine approval. One after another, the priest held the chalice toward them. The silver light flickered faintly, but none shone bright. Whispers filled the air. Nervous glances followed. The Queen Mother's smile began to falter. And then, from the edge of the hall, someone gasped. The moonlight had shifted. Slowly, like water finding its way home, the pale glow drifted away from the noble daughters, away from the throne, until it landed softly upon Arya. The hall went silent. Her breath caught. The silver light wrapped around her gently, brushing against her shoulders like silk. "No," the Queen Mother whispered under her breath. The priest stumbled back, his voice trembling. The moon has chosen." Before he could finish, the Queen Mother rose sharply. "Impossible," she hissed. "A wolfless girl cannot be chosen." But the light only grew stronger. It was Kale who broke the silence. He rose slowly from his throne, his gaze never leaving Arya. "The moon has spoken," he said quietly. The crowd gasped. "Your Majesty," Lord Garen protested, "this cannot be." But Kale was already walking down the steps. He crossed the hall, each footstep echoing like a heartbeat, until he stood before Arya. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, in front of every noble, every warrior, every courtier, he took her trembling hand and said, "The moon herself chose her for me." The hall erupted in shock. The Queen Mother's staff slammed against the marble floor. "Enough," she thundered. "This farce ends now." But Kale didn't release Arya's hand. He turned to face the court. "For too long," he said, voice firm and clear, "we have mistaken power for worth. We've called strength the mark of divinity and weakness a curse. But look at her, she has no wolf, no title, yet the moon blessed her. Gasps filled the hall. Some wolves bowed their heads in shame. Others whispered in disbelief. Kale continued, "The moon does not choose bloodlines or crowns. She chooses hearts. And if my heart belongs to her, then so be it." Tears welled in Arya's eyes. Not because of the words, but because, for the first time, he said them before the world. But not everyone was moved. "Blasphemy," shouted a noblewoman. "You insult the sacred order." "Witchcraft," another yelled. "She's cursed the moonlight." In moments, chaos spread like wildfire. Wolves snarled. Daughters screamed. Guards moved forward uncertainly, awaiting orders. The Queen Mother's eyes burned with fury. "Guards," she shouted. "Seize her." Kale's head snapped toward her. "Mother. Do not defy me again," she roared. "You may be king, but the laws are older than you. A wolfless girl cannot defy the sacred order." The guards hesitated, torn between their queen and their king. "Anyone who touches her," Kale warned, his voice suddenly cold and dangerous, "will answer to me." His aura flared, a powerful, golden pulse that sent lesser wolves staggering backward. But the Queen Mother's will was iron. "Arrest her," she commanded again. "For blasphemy against the moon." Arya's heart pounded as armored guards approached, their silver chains glinting under the moonlight. She turned to Kale, her eyes wide. "Kale, please." "I won't let them," he said, stepping in front of her. Two guards hesitated, looking between the two royals. "Your Majesty, the Queen Mother's orders." Kale's eyes flashed gold. "Disobey me, and I'll strip your rank myself." Still, the Queen Mother's voice boomed through the hall. "Do you not see what she's done? The moon's light was sacred, she twisted it. She bewitched it." Arya flinched. "I didn't." "Silence," the Queen Mother hissed. "You have no right to speak in this hall." Kale turned on her sharply. "Then neither do you. The moon spoke, and you would silence her voice? She's not the moon." "No," Kale said quietly, "but she's the heart it chose." The Queen Mother's face hardened, and she lifted her hand. "Then you leave me no choice." Before Kale could react, the guards surged forward, surrounding Arya. "Don't touch her," he shouted, but they were too many. Chains clinked. Hands grabbed her wrists. Arya cried out as the cold metal bound her arms. "Kale," she gasped. He lunged toward her, but the Queen Mother raised her staff, a blinding flash of blue light struck the floor, forming a shimmering barrier between them. Kale slammed against it, snarling with fury. "Mother, stop this." Her eyes were cold as ice. "You brought shame upon your crown. You let your heart blind your reason. You forgot who you are. And you," he growled, "forgot what it means to be human." The Queen Mother turned away. "Take her to the dungeons beneath the Moon Temple. She will answer for her deceit." The guards began dragging Arya away. She looked over her shoulder, tears streaming down her face. Kale fought against the barrier, his fists striking the light again and again. "Let her go." But his voice couldn't reach her now. Her last words before disappearing down the corridor broke him completely. "Why does love always have to hurt, Kale?" And then she was gone. The moon above the hall flickered, dimming for the first time in centuries. Wolves looked up in fear as the light that had once blessed them began to fade. Kale fell to his knees, the echo of her chains still ringing in his ears. And high above, the Queen Mother whispered coldly, "Let this be a lesson, my son. The moon may choose, but I decide who rules." The Queen Mother orders Arya's arrest for defying the sacred order, and before the horrified eyes of the kingdom, the wolfless girl who was chosen by the moon is dragged away in chains. The sound of dripping water echoed endlessly in the darkness. Every drop was a reminder of how long she had been forgotten. Arya sat against the damp stone wall, her wrists still bound in iron cuffs. The dungeon beneath the Moon Temple was colder than she'd imagined, colder than the rejection she'd endured her whole life. The torchlight flickered weakly, casting shadows that crawled across the walls like ghosts. Her dress was torn. Her hands bruised. But her spirit, though trembling, refused to die. She thought of Kale. The look in his eyes when they took her away. The fury. The helplessness. The promise he couldn't keep. Kale, she whispered, voice cracking. Why does love always have to hurt? The silence answered her. In the grand throne room above, chaos brewed like a storm. Kale stood before the council, his jaw tight, eyes burning gold with restrained rage. Around him sat the 12 elders of the noble court, wolves older than him, bound by traditions older than reason. The Queen Mother presided like a viper in silk, calm but venomous. Your defiance has gone far enough, Lord Garin declared. You would risk the stability of the entire kingdom for a wolfless girl? Kale's voice was low but firm. She is more wolf than any of you will ever be. Blasphemy, another shouted. She bewitched the moon itself. Kale slammed his palm against the marble table, the sound echoing through the chamber. She did nothing but love this kingdom, even when it gave her nothing but pain. The Queen Mother's lips curved slightly. And yet, that love will be her undoing. He turned to her, fury rising. You've imprisoned an innocent woman. She is not innocent, the Queen Mother replied coldly. She carries a curse. One that should have been purged long ago. What curse? Kale demanded. Her kindness? Her heart? Or the fact that the moon chose her instead of one of your noble daughters? The room fell silent. Every eye flickered between the mother and her son. Finally, Lord Garin spoke again, careful and calculating. If you continue this rebellion, Your Majesty, the council will have no choice but to declare you unfit to rule. Kale froze. The words struck harder than any blade. Unfit to rule. He could lose everything, his throne, his pack, his people. But when he closed his eyes, he saw her face broken and alone in the dungeon, and the choice was no choice at all. If my crown demands her suffering, Kale said slowly, then I no longer wish to wear it. Gasps filled the room. The Queen Mother's eyes widened, just for a heartbeat. You would throw away your destiny for her? He looked straight at her. No. I would fulfill it. And then he turned and walked away, his cloak trailing behind him like a shadow of his defiance. Back in the dungeon, Arya's world was dim and fading. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. The guards didn't speak to her. Only the silence did. But on the third night, a sound broke the stillness. Footsteps. Soft. Hesitant. Not a guard. Who's there? She whispered. A frail voice answered. Someone who remembers. Out of the shadows stepped an old wolf, gray hair, frail hands, wearing the robes of a royal scribe. His eyes gleamed with guilt and sorrow. I served the royal family before the purge, he said. Before your family was banished. Arya's breath caught. You know my parents? The old wolf nodded slowly. I know what they did, and what the crown did to them. He knelt before her, pulling a small silver locket from his cloak. Inside, a sigil shimmered faintly, the mark of the royal bloodline. Your parents once saved the royal heir, he said quietly. When the late king was poisoned by rogue magic, it was your mother, a healer, who cured him. But healing him required a forbidden spell. The court called it witchcraft. The Queen Mother demanded their exile. Arya's vision blurred with tears. They saved the king, and were punished for it? Yes, he whispered. And worse, to protect the royal secret, your family's wolves were bound by an oath spell. What? She breathed. He looked at her with trembling sorrow. You were never wolfless, Arya. Your wolf was sealed, locked away by the same spell that saved the king's life. Her heart stopped. Every moment of her childhood, the pain, the mockery, the loneliness, suddenly made cruel sense. I had a wolf all this time, she whispered. And they took it from me. The old scribe nodded slowly. The spell can be undone. But only by the moon herself. Before she could ask more, the sound of approaching guards echoed down the corridor. Go, she urged. If they find you. He pressed the locket into her hands. Keep it. The truth is your weapon now. Then he disappeared into the shadows just as the guards arrived. That same night, Kale stood outside the dungeon gates, dressed in black, his face hidden beneath a hood. 2 loyal guards, the only ones he could still trust, stood beside him. Open the gate, he ordered quietly. Your Majesty, one whispered nervously, if they catch us. They won't. The iron doors creaked open, revealing the dim corridor beyond. Kale's heart pounded with every step. He could hear the faint sound of chains, of shallow breathing, and then he saw her. Arya. She looked fragile, sitting in the corner of her cell. Her head rested against the wall, eyes half closed, but when she heard the soft click of his boots, she stirred. Kale? The sound of her voice nearly broke him. He stepped closer, lowering his hood. It's me. For a moment, she just stared, as if she didn't believe he was real. Then her lips trembled. You shouldn't be here. I had to see you, he whispered. I couldn't leave you down here another night. Her eyes filled with tears. You'll lose everything. Then let me lose it for something that matters. He reached through the bars, his fingers brushing her cheek. She leaned into his touch like someone starved for warmth. I'm getting you out of here, he said. Tonight. But before he could unlock the gate, the sound of boots thundered behind him. Kale, a guard shouted. The Queen Mother knows. Kale spun, drawing his sword in a blur of motion. The loyal guards blocked the narrow corridor, buying him time. Go, one of them yelled. Save her. Kale slammed the lock open, grabbing Arya's hand. Run. They bolted through the winding corridors of the dungeon, torchlight flashing past the walls. Shouts echoed behind them. But as they reached the final gate, more soldiers appeared. Kale's heart sank. There were too many. He turned to Arya. I'll distract them. Take the passage to the East Tower. No, she cried. I'm not leaving you. Arya. Before he could finish, a flash of blue light filled the air. The Queen Mother appeared, her eyes blazing with fury. So predictable, she hissed. You would trade your throne for a girl born of a cursed line. Kale stepped in front of Arya, his voice dark and dangerous. She's not cursed. You are. The Queen Mother raised her staff, and chains of pure light burst from the ground, wrapping around Arya once more. Kale lunged forward, but this time, even his power couldn't break through. Kale. Arya screamed, her vision going white, and suddenly, everything disappeared. When Arya opened her eyes, she was no longer in the dungeon. She stood in a vast field bathed in silver light. The air shimmered like liquid moonlight, and in the distance, a figure approached, graceful, radiant, her eyes glowing like galaxies. Child of the Forgotten, the woman's voice echoed softly. Do you know who I am? Arya fell to her knees. The Moon Goddess. The goddess smiled gently. You have suffered much, little wolf. But your pain was never without purpose. Arya's voice trembled. Why me? Why make me wolfless? Why take everything away? Because only in emptiness can true strength be born, the goddess said. Your wolf is not lost, Arya. She sleeps, waiting for the moment your heart is ready to awaken her. Tears streamed down Arya's face. Then tell me how to wake her. The moon goddess stepped closer, placing a hand over her chest. The bond of your soul and your wolf was sealed by fear, not fate. To break it, you must face the same fear that bound it. What fear? Arya whispered. The fear of being unworthy of love. Arya gasped softly. The goddess's touch glowed brighter. When the one who sees you as you are stands beside you again, the goddess whispered, the chains of your wolf shall break. Arya reached out desperately. Please, don't go. Arya's eyes snapped open, back in the dungeon. But something had changed. The chains around her wrists glowed faintly, cracks forming across the metal. Her heartbeat echoed louder, deeper, like something ancient stirring inside her. And somewhere far above, under the same moonlight, Kale felt the ground tremble. He turned toward the window of his chamber, and for the first time, he heard it. A wolf's distant cry. Soft. Powerful. Familiar. His heart raced. Arya, he whispered. The moon goddess appears to Arya in a vision, your wolf is not lost, only waiting. And in the distance, a long-forgotten howl pierces the night, signaling that her awakening has begun. The moon hung heavy in the sky, swollen and red, a blood moon unlike any other. Its crimson glow spilled through the narrow windows of the royal dungeon where Arya once sat, but tonight, she was no prisoner. Tonight, she stood on the cliffs beyond the palace walls, the wind whipping through her hair, her eyes fixed on the heavens. Something ancient pulsed beneath her skin, wild, fierce, alive. Her heart thudded in rhythm with the howling winds, a rhythm that didn't belong to the girl who'd been mocked all her life. It belonged to something greater, something that had been waiting. And far away, in the royal courtyard, Kale felt it. He froze mid-step, his golden eyes flickering with shock as a searing pull ran through his chest. The bond, the sacred tether between true mates, had come alive. His wolf roared inside him, recognizing her essence at once. Arya, he whispered, breath trembling. The goddess, she's awakening. Kale stormed out of the palace gates, ignoring the shouts of his guards and the desperate calls of the Queen Mother. His boots crushed the wet soil as he raced toward the northern cliffs, guided not by sight, but by the magnetic bond that now burned like fire through his veins. Each heartbeat echoed hers. Each breath felt shared. The distance between them dissolved with every step. And then, he saw her. Arya stood under the blood moon, arms slightly raised, her eyes glowing a deep, unnatural silver. Energy rippled around her, lifting her long hair as if she stood in the center of a storm. The air smelled of ozone and wild power, of rebirth and destiny. Kale slowed, breathless, not from running, but from awe. The wolfless girl he once found half-frozen by the river now looked like something divine. The light of the moon goddess wrapped her like a halo, and for the first time, Kale understood what it meant to stand in the presence of fate. Arya's voice broke the silence, soft yet resonant. Kale. I remember now. The dreams, the whispers. He stepped closer. What do you remember? She turned toward him, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. The goddess showed me everything. My parents were not traitors, they protected your kingdom. They gave their lives to seal a curse meant to destroy the royal bloodline. Kale's eyes widened. And that curse was bound to me, she finished, her voice trembling. They sealed my wolf to save yours. My entire life, the pain, the mockery, the emptiness, it was never a punishment. It was a sacrifice. Kale's chest tightened. The truth hit him like lightning. The same royal family that mocked her lineage had used her bloodline to survive. And yet, she still stood here. Pure. Forgiving. Radiant. He dropped to his knees before her, unable to hold the weight of his guilt. Arya. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Her hand trembled as she reached for his face. This isn't about forgiveness. It's about truth. And destiny. Before he could speak, the thunder of hooves echoed from the woods. The Queen Mother appeared, flanked by royal guards and trembling nobles. Her gown shimmered like ice beneath the moonlight, but her eyes, dark and furious, burned with disbelief. What trickery is this? She hissed. What have you done, Kale? Kale rose, shielding Arya behind him. Mother, the truth you buried has returned. Arya's wolf was sealed by royal command generations ago. She was never wolfless. The queen's lips curled. Lies. No mere girl could bear such power. Arya's eyes glowed brighter, and her voice dropped an octave, resonating with otherworldly calm. Then ask the moon goddess yourself. The wind howled, and suddenly the clouds parted. A beam of silver light descended upon Arya, swirling around her form until the faint outline of a spectral wolf appeared behind her, enormous, majestic, and burning with lunar fire. The guards fell to their knees. The nobles gasped. Even the queen stumbled back, terror flickering across her once cold features. She's the blessed one, someone whispered. Kale's heart swelled with pride and reverence. She's my mate. The air grew heavy with magic as Arya's wolf howled, a deep, haunting sound that shook the forest and rippled across the kingdom. Every wolf in the land lifted their head to answer. Kale took a step forward, his eyes locked on hers. Your wolf is magnificent. Arya smiled faintly. She's been waiting for this moment, for us. Then her glow softened, and her body wavered as exhaustion set in. Kale caught her before she could fall, holding her close. Her head rested against his chest, her breathing shallow but steady. She's safe now, he whispered, stroking her hair. You're safe. The Queen Mother looked on, pale and trembling. What have I done? She murmured, sinking to the ground as the truth finally broke her pride. Kale turned toward her. You've spent years fearing the very prophecy that was meant to save us. Tears welled in the Queen's eyes as she whispered, then, forgive me, my son. Forgive me, child of the moon. Arya's soft voice broke through the night. Forgiveness is the only thing that can free us all. By dawn, the entire kingdom gathered before the palace steps. Word of the revelation had spread faster than fire. Wolves of every rank knelt as Kale carried Arya in his arms, her silver aura still faintly glowing. He stood before the court, voice firm and steady. Tonight, the moon revealed the truth. The woman you scorned as cursed is the reason your king lives. The wolfless girl is the chosen one, the bearer of light, the protector of this realm. Gasps and murmurs swept the crowd. Kale looked down at Arya, his expression softening. And she is my mate. Arya opened her eyes, meeting his. The warmth between them glowed like sunrise after storm. The crowd slowly began to bow, first the guards, then the nobles, then even the Queen Mother. One by one, the wolves knelt, not in fear, but in reverence. For the first time in her life, Arya was seen, not as an outcast, not as a curse, but as the heart of the kingdom itself. As night fell once more, Kale led Arya to the royal balcony overlooking the moonlit valley. The blood moon had faded, leaving behind a silvery calm that shimmered across the horizon. He turned to her, voice soft and raw. I once ran from the idea of fate, from the thought that the moon could decide my heart. But then I met you, and I realized destiny doesn't chain us, it chooses us.